The day I signed the divorce papers, my husband stood across the table smiling, not because he was happy, but because he thought I was finished. He had the money. He had the company. And he believed I had nothing left. What he didn't know was that betrayal would become the greatest lesson of my life, and the foundation of my empire. Love can build you. Love can break you. And sometimes, love teaches you lessons so painful that they change the direction of your entire life. This is not a fairy tale. This is not a movie script. This is the true story of Michelle Carter, a black woman who stood beside her husband when he had nothing. No money, no status, no future, and was left behind when success finally came. But instead of becoming bitter, Michelle became unstoppable. Michelle Carter grew up on the south side of Chicago. Her childhood was not easy, but it taught her strength early. Her mother worked 2 jobs, and her father left when she was 9. Michelle learned quickly that nothing in life was guaranteed, except hard work. She met Daniel Carter when she was 23. Daniel was charming, ambitious, and full of big dreams. But dreams were all he had. He worked part-time jobs, dropped out of college, and often talked more than he acted. Most people didn't take him seriously. Michelle did. When Daniel said, "One day I'll build something big," Michelle replied, "Then I'll stand with you until you do." They married quietly. No fancy wedding. No expensive rings. Just love, hope, and belief. During the early years of marriage, life tested them hard. They lived in a small apartment with thin walls and unpaid bills. Michelle worked as a customer service representative during the day and took online business courses at night. Daniel tried different ideas. Most of them failed. When Daniel felt like quitting, Michelle encouraged him. When he felt embarrassed borrowing money, Michelle reminded him of the future. When friends laughed at his ideas, Michelle defended him. She wasn't just a wife. She was his emotional support, his planner, his motivator, and often his safety net. One night, Daniel came home angry after being rejected by investors. "I'm tired of being nobody," he said. Michelle looked at him and replied calmly, "Then let's build something ourselves. Step by step." That sentence changed everything. Using Michelle's savings, money she had been quietly setting aside, they launched a small logistics consulting service. Michelle handled paperwork, emails, and finances. Daniel was the face of the business. First, they made almost nothing. Michelle skipped new clothes. She delayed having children. She worked overtime to cover expenses. Slowly, the business began to grow. Contract here. A recommendation there. Then suddenly, a major client. Money started coming in. And that's when things began to change. With money came confidence. With confidence came ego. Daniel started dressing differently, talking differently, acting differently. He stopped asking Michelle for advice, stopped including her in meetings, stopped coming home on time. First, Michelle thought it was stress. Then came secrecy. Phone calls taken outside. Passwords changed. Bank statements hidden. One evening, Michelle asked a simple question. "Why do I feel like I'm being pushed out?" Daniel laughed lightly and said, "You worry too much. This is just business." But Michelle felt it, something was breaking. The truth came out slowly, then all at once. Daniel had started an affair with a woman he met through work. A woman who admired his success, but knew nothing about his struggle. Worse than the affair was the betrayal of credit. Daniel told people he built everything alone. He removed Michelle's name from company documents. He spoke about her as just my wife, not a partner. When Michelle confronted him, he didn't deny it. Instead, he said words she would never forget. "I've outgrown you." Those 4 words hurt more than the affair, more than the lies, more than the loss of the business. She realized something painful that night. She helped build his dream, but never protected her own. The divorce was quick. Daniel had lawyers. Michelle had exhaustion. She walked away with very little, emotionally drained, financially unstable, and deeply wounded. Friends said, "You should have known better." Others said, Just move on. But Michelle didn't just lose a marriage. She lost years, trust, identity. For months, she questioned herself. Was I stupid? Was my loyalty a weakness? Was love a mistake? Then one morning, sitting alone in her apartment, Michelle opened her old notebook, the one she used during the early business days. Inside were ideas, plans, dreams she had put aside. And that's when a new thought entered her mind. What if this pain is not the end, but the beginning? Michelle made a decision that day. She would stop mourning what she lost and start building what was always hers. She didn't want revenge. She wanted independence. She didn't want apologies. She wanted ownership. With no investors, no partner, and no safety net. Just experience, pain, and purpose. But rebuilding from betrayal is never easy. And the road ahead would test her in ways she never imagined. Michelle takes her first terrifying step into entrepreneurship alone, facing fear, failure, and the moment where she almost gives up, before everything changes. From broken trust to building power. Pain does not announce itself politely. It arrives quietly, in the morning silence, in empty rooms, in memories that refuse to leave. For Michelle Carter, the days after divorce felt longer than nights. She was no longer a wife, no longer a partner, no longer part of the business she helped build. But she was still breathing. And that meant her story was not over. Michelle moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. No luxury, no comfort, just space to think. Her bank balance was low. Her confidence was lower. Yet one thing was clear, she had knowledge. She understood systems. She understood clients. She understood mistakes that destroy businesses from the inside. And most importantly, she understood people. Michelle took a job as a freelance business consultant. She worked quietly, helping small Black-owned businesses fix problems they didn't even know they had. She charged little. She worked a lot. She listened carefully. At night, doubt followed her. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if he was right? But every client she helped reminded her of one truth. She was never weak, she was unseen. Michelle decided to officially launch her own consulting firm. She named it Carter & Company. Solutions. Not after her ex-husband, but after herself. The first 3 months were brutal. Clients canceled. Invoices went unpaid. Marketing failed. One night, sitting on the floor surrounded by papers, Michelle cried. Not loudly but deeply. For the first time she thought about quitting. Then she remembered something important. When Daniel failed, she stood by him. Now she would stand by herself. Michelle stopped trying to please everyone. She refined her focus. Women entrepreneurs. Minority-owned businesses. Founders who were overlooked, underestimated, and unheard. She created workshops. She spoke at community centers. She shared her story, not as a victim but as a lesson. People listened. Because Michelle wasn't selling motivation. She was selling experience. And experience carries weight. Everything changed at a small business conference. Michelle was not the main speaker. She wasn't even listed properly in the program. But when she spoke, the room went quiet. She talked about betrayal. She talked about unpaid labor. She talked about women who build businesses from the background and are erased later. When she finished, people stood up. That night, her inbox exploded. Emails, calls, invitations. For the first time since her divorce, Michelle felt something new. Momentum. Michelle made a rule early. No partnership without protection. No trust without structure. She hired lawyers. She signed contracts. She documented everything. This wasn't bitterness. This was wisdom. Her firm grew steadily. Then rapidly. She expanded into mentorship programs, online courses, and business audits. Michelle wasn't just helping people make money. She was teaching them how not to lose themselves while doing it. 2 years later, Michelle received an unexpected email. It was from Daniel. His business was struggling. Partners had left. Investors pulled out. He asked to meet. Michelle agreed. Not out of weakness but closure. They met at a cafe. Daniel looked tired. Older. I didn't realize what I lost, he said quietly. Michelle listened calmly. Then she replied. I didn't lose anything. I found myself. She stood up, paid for her coffee, and walked away. That chapter was closed. Michelle's company crossed 7 figures in revenue. But money was never the headline. She launched a non-profit supporting divorced women rebuilding careers. She funded scholarships. She spoke on national platforms. Her story became proof that betrayal doesn't define you, response does. Michelle often said, "They tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed." Michelle educated women on financial literacy, legal protection, emotional boundaries, self-worth in relationships. She warned them, love is not silence. Support should never erase you. And sacrifice without security is dangerous. Her message saved marriages. And ended others, the unhealthy ones. Years later, Michelle stood on stage receiving an award for women-led businesses. She looked into the audience and smiled. Not because of success, but because of survival. Because she turned heartbreak into education. Betrayal into blueprint. Loss into legacy. If love costs you your identity, it's too expensive. Michelle Carter didn't win because she was lucky. She won because she learned. And the greatest lesson of all, sometimes the person who breaks you is the person who introduces you to your power. Love should never require self-erasure. Support should never mean silence. And betrayal, when faced with courage, can become the foundation of greatness.